The time has come to pledge to leave the ECHR, says Conservative MP and former Brexit Secretary Steve Barclay. Taking to social media platform X, Barclay said, "We now need to be bold and admit that it's time the UK left the European Convention on Human Rights. Doing so is the only way to allow tough action to stop small boat arrivals and deport foreign criminals." Barclay is not the only one calling for the UK to leave the European Convention on Human Rights. Here is the Shadow Justice Secretary, Robert Jenrick.
You're going to have to leave the ECHR and create our own British Bill of Rights.
And here is the leader of Reform UK, Nigel Farage.
We need to leave the ECHR so we can deport people that come illegally and take back control of our borders.
Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the Conservative Party, appears to be preparing to jump on the same bandwagon.
So, we will review every policy, treaty and part of our legal framework, including the ECHR and the Human Rights Act.
But the claim, often repeated by right-wing politicians, that the ECHR is blocking the UK from deporting migrants is not entirely true for two very specific reasons. Firstly, the European Court of Human Rights can only step in under very specific circumstances. As a bastion of human rights, the ECHR can prevent deportations if the asylum seeker in question faces a real risk of torture or degrading treatment in the country they will be sent to in violation of Article 3 of the ECHR. And surely that's a good thing, isn't it? But the second and perhaps even more important reason why this particular claim is false
We need to leave the ECHR so we can deport people that come illegally
is that the legal principle of non-refoulement is not just based on the ECHR. It's also a core principle of international law. The non-refoulement principle forbids countries from deporting people to a country which could threaten their life or freedom based on things like their race, religion or nationality. In fact, it's a key component not just of the ECHR, but of other international agreements, including the UN's 1951 Refugee Convention, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and the UN Convention Against Torture. So when you hear politicians say this,
we need to leave the ECHR so we can deport people that come illegally,
please remember that even if the UK left the ECHR, it would still be bound by other international obligations and treaties. The simple fact is that if you want to give yourself a completely free hand internationally, you would have to withdraw not only from the ECHR, but also from the Refugee Convention and the United Nations Convention Against Torture. Just think about that. And leaving the ECHR would be a devastating blow to the UK's reputation within Europe and beyond as a country that accepted basic human rights obligations.
It would be a devastating blow to the UK's reputation within Europe and beyond as a kind of, as a country that accepted basic human rights obligations.
So what's the real motive behind leaving the ECHR? Well, let's not forget the European Convention on Human Rights protects our right to a fair trial, freedom of assembly and expression, the right to participate in free elections, freedom of religion, freedom from discrimination, the right to privacy, freedom from torture and degrading treatment. The ECHR has also protected British people from abuses of power by its own government. And if all that's not enough for you, leaving the ECHR could result in the UK's trade deal with the EU being terminated because the convention is written into the 2020 Trade and Cooperation Agreement. And leaving the ECHR would also breach the Good Friday Agreement, which requires that the convention be directly enforceable in Northern Ireland. As for this,
and create our own British Bill of Rights.
Well, that presupposes you can actually trust the party suggesting it with your human rights in the first place. Let's not forget that last time that lot were in power, they repeatedly tried to curtail our human rights under the existing convention we're already a part of. During their time in office, they passed new anti-strike laws designed to rob millions of workers of their democratic right to strike. An Elections Act locked millions of people out of the electoral process. A new law stripped back our right to protest and limited our rights to judicial review. Joining Russia and Belarus as the only European countries outside the ECHR is not the answer.